So, how are you all doing from the 1212 portal? Did you feel that? So, I'm going to be talking about bringing in some of the principles because I think sometimes when we talk about what we read, we just kind of read them. We don't really look at them at any further beyond just reading them. So we're going to look at, we believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. We affirm that the correct understanding of such expressions and living in accordance therewith constitutes true religion. We affirm that the moral responsibility of the individual, and we make our own happiness and unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. We affirm the doorway to reformation is never closed against any soul here or hereafter. And I almost didn't add that one to my talk today. But I think we've done so much beating up on ourselves that we forget that we are human. We're human here making mistakes to learn something for our soul's ascension and growth. So, I want to talk to you about the state of consciousness with being. Because a lot of people, at least up by me, have been highly triggered. Whether it's road rage, or somebody telling you you look awful that you don't even know out of the blue, standing in a shopping line and saying, why would you wear that to a store? I've heard those things. Okay? So people, I swear, are off the rocker. So I'm going to just put it point blank between the unconscious and the conscious. When we are connected, how many have been feeling the need to basically do a good soul dump? And I mean like a dump. It's funny, I was listening to Brené Brown yesterday talking about shame. And she talked about the swamp of, that shame is like the swamp of the soul. But yet we have to walk through it with our galoshes to know what to let go of and what to heal from. Okay? So when we are actually in a state of connectedness to our very being, our soul, it's only from that state of who we are as a being that we can actually transform. We can free ourselves from the what I like to call the bondage of the traumas, the pain, the hurt, the betrayals, etc., 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 etc. Okay, we can add all the labels. When we are hurt, how many of you felt like somebody's hurt you, especially recently in the past 30 days? And it hurt really hard, and you got really either angry, upset, frustrated, maybe you cried, maybe you got anxious, who knows? Okay, we all handle these things differently. When that happens, we got to remember that's happening to us on a level of form. This is our form, which means it's happening to us psychologically, it's happening to us physically. It's the pain inflicted, it's the transgression, it's the betrayal. And it's only from there, though, from that place of pain, that we can actually see the relative nature of what is or what was done. And when we can touch that space of our being, then we can also see that person that hurt us in a different light. And not only that, but that hurt, we only get hurt from a place of already being wounded. Because if we already didn't have a festered sore already there in our subconscious, it would have just rolled off one shoulder and off the other, and you would have just moved on. What I like to say with these triggers is that this is where we're at. Don't let the emotions take over, but let them be a GPS system to the inner being of who you are, to know how to navigate and find yourself back to you, to let go. I always hear, everybody keeps telling me to let go, but I have no idea how to do that. Well, we can have a conversation on that later. But when we talk in trauma work, most trauma survivors, rape survivors, don't want to feel, even if it's 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. But in order to let go, you have to feel. And when you can feel, then you can understand. When you can understand, then you can let go. So it's in this being, this place, this dimension of being, that is beyond being injured. It is only, remember, it's only the form. It's the ego. It's the form. It's the physicality that can actually be injured. The person of who you are, the being, the soul, cannot. Because remember, the universe doesn't see things as good or bad. It's just is. Isness. When the pain that's inflicted on us out of the unconsciousness, because that's really what it is, the person or the situation that inflicted pain on us, it was from an unconscious wound. Because if they were conscious, they wouldn't have inflicted the pain, and if we were fully conscious, we wouldn't have been affected by it. This is where I'm going to challenge us, some of us that say we're woke. How woke are we? Are we, barely getting by, rubbing our eyes? Or are we woke, walking the plane and letting life be? This does not equate, let me just make that clear, to what anybody has done to us. But at the same time, it's only from a place of connectedness with the being that we can no longer hold on to that. This is part of letting go. This is how we let go. Because are we living in victim mode or are we living in soul mode? And I'll challenge, I do this in my office all the time. When I work with clients, I'll challenge them on the victim mode piece. And they're like, I'm not in victim mode. Okay, let's see. Their energy, their thoughts don't lie. The challenge is we're not aware of them half the time. Okay? But when we are in touch with that which is inside of us, that being, that is what is beyond that can ever get injured. So that spouse or that boyfriend or that girlfriend that maybe cheated on you umpteen years ago, that may be festering somewhere, for instance, because festers in the sense of you don't trust in relationships maybe, or you don't trust in yourself and your decisions. That's the story that your ego is feeding you, like the little devil sitting on the shoulder saying, we're going to have some fun now. But the being of who you are just sees it as a fact. It doesn't fester into a story that is beyond of what it is. If we are not in touch with that space, it is hard to even forgive. It is hard to let go. Meaning that we still harbor onto that grievance, that resentment, those negative feelings, those negative self-sabotaging behaviors. It is only possible when we are connected to the formless that is within us, that soul, that being, that spirit. That is deeper than any form, because it's that knowing. It's that knowing that is deeper beyond the form, beyond of what we see. Then when something happens, it's almost as if it never did. Because the one thing I've learned when dealing with abusers and narcissists and sociopaths, they love the attention. This is where silence works very well in an empowerment way, because we don't feed their fuel. That's how we take their power away, in a sense. We don't feed it. We don't let it fester. We don't let it take over and corrupt our very being of who we are. I had a client this week that I've been working with for about a year. And one of her complaints was, I can't stand being around my mother. She's so negative, she's energy draining, she's battery, but I live with her, but at the same time I want a relationship with her, and this is very frustrating. She really needs some serious help, but she won't get it for herself. So my response was, work on you and watch her change. Because if we vibrate from within and you live together, guess what happens? It becomes contagious. So she came in this week and she was telling me of a story, saying, do you remember that story I told you about that coworker that really kind of ticked me off and how it like manifested because she's very OCD and blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, I remember. And she's like, well, she did it again this year. And I said, really? She said, yeah, but my mother sat there and said, do you realize how far you've come? Do you realize how healthy your boundaries have gotten? And blah, 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 total reversal. And she just sat there with her chin dropped. And I said, well, didn't I say that your mother will finally rub off what you're doing? She said, yeah. I go, and how did you take what happened with your coworker? I don't know how I let it go. It just let go. I didn't let it fester. And I said, really? I said, do you remember like the movie, The Karate Kid? Right? Wax on, wax off. Right? But in the meantime, it's like, I want to learn karate. I don't want to learn how to paint your fence. Well, he didn't realize he was learning the pools to know how to learn karate. Okay? So sometimes things work in mysterious ways if you're just maintaining certain disciplines because the universe is going to send you these things. Because the ego, like anger, for instance, the person that gives you the anger, the abuser, the aggressor, the person that commits violence, I mean, you can even go into the mass shooters and everything. Their anger is so gigantic, right? There's not even enough consciousness to even deal with it because the anger took over. So when you see somebody acting out, just recognize it's not their being, it's their form. We can see it in a little different light. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held accountable if they hurt somebody. There's a whole different play there, okay? But the anger tends to take over and uses us like a virus, like an addiction. I see so many people sometimes addicted to their own anger, to their own drama. We can talk about addiction in so many different ways. But the ego is gigantic. And I heard somebody compare anger, ego, to the equivalent of being the Incredible Hulk, which is uncontrollable because once it takes over, you even lose the being of who you are. And then you go and you beat yourself up saying, I'm a horrible person, I'm this, what the hell F is wrong with me? Right? We do that. Well, if we just take a step, pause, and see what the anger is actually showing us, it probably has absolutely nothing to do with the current situation that triggered the anger. It was just a trigger. It is what's unresolved. That's what this whole year, this is what this 12-12 portal is teaching us, okay? This afternoon, we're going to be teaching a class on the 2020 numerology, both collectively and individually. So I'm going to teach you how to pull your own numbers for the year and what they mean. And why is that relevant now? Because the energies are heightening things in all of us. Those that have done the work are going to be triggered with how well you have done your work. Those that are waking up are going to need a soft plan to fall because they're going to be filleting and all over the place and not know how to find their legs beneath them. So that's where we have to kind of give them extra compassion. Maybe I think my card this year on the tarot card deck has been the Hermit. I've been really liking being the Hermit and away from groups and chaos because it's just too much for me being empathic. But things are being heightened because Spirit is trying to help us to step forward and into that place of soul, that place of being. We have the holidays, which we know suicide is probably the highest during the holidays. We have gotten so out of touch with what the holidays really mean. I hear it so often that people, this is all I've heard so far. I don't have the money to go buy this, but I gotta outspend that person because or else I'm not a good enough uncle. Or I gotta buy this gift or else I'm not a good enough mother. What's wrong with us that we equate materialism with love? So Spirit is really hounding us to return to the purpose more than just materialism. The materialism that only adds more clutter and more pollution to this planet that we are supposed to be stewards of and honoring and respecting. The ancestors of this land, if you've been working with them, have been very vocal this year, and it's only going to get louder. So I hope you will stay with us this afternoon, because we're going to help prepare ourselves not only for next year, but write a whole plan for the next decade. And sometimes, even if we're in a change or a transition, like mine's a 5-year next year, and I'm going, oh my gosh, how am I going to do it? How am I going to handle it? Because I'm taking a 1-year certification class on addictions counseling. I'm going, how am I going to add 20 more hours to my week? And then when I saw my number, and I go, that's funny. Yeah, see, I'm already in the flow. So it kind of doesn't mean my stress is fully reduced, but it kind of made sense when I learned that my number was a 5 for next year. And I said, that explains why X, Y, and Z are finally now happening that year. Not this year, not 2021, but this year. So let's clear away these old belief systems, because that's what's happening right now. Whenever you find yourself beating yourself up, remember, go back to the Spiritualist Principles, both on personal responsibility, but also the nature piece. We have gotten so out of touch with who we are as a being. Let's clear away those traumas. Let's clear away those judgments. And let's step into the flow of who we are in alignment with the universe. Because at the end of the day, nothing is in our control. But life is a heck of a lot easier when you can just pull your paddles out on your raft in the middle of the flood and use the paddles to navigate so you don't hit any rocks. Wouldn't that be much more fun? So you're ready to change your life? Are you ready to step into who you are? Are you ready to be who you came here to be? I'm not hearing any reactions. You guys are too darn quiet. Your soul, your being needs to hear it from you. Are you ready to be who you came here to be? And who gives a crap what your spouse, your neighbor, and everybody else is doing? You are a piece to a particular part of the larger puzzle. Let's all focus on how we be that best piece in that larger puzzle instead of comparing who the other piece is and whether or not they're better or more deserving than us. No. You're equally here, equally worthy, equally deserving. Thank you.